Good evening and welcome to our all-inclusive Facebook Live session this evening. It's great to be able to use Facebook to share all-inclusive with a wider audience. I hope that you're going to find some things during this evening that will be really helpful to you as you reach out to children, young people and also vulnerable adults within your church community. Please do press like or comment within Facebook. That will share what we're talking about this evening with an even wider audience. And if you've got questions as we go through the evening together, please do send those as comments and we'll try and pick those up either as we go or if we've got some time at the end we can look at those then. We're going to be looking at the broad picture of what it means to be reaching young people and children with additional needs, and we're going to be looking at some of the strategies that you could try in your own children's and youth work that would make a real difference to help and support those children and young people that you're working with. So please connect with us in all the usual ways by liking, by commenting. We'll be in touch with you as well, and buckle in and let's have a great evening exploring this topic together. I'm going to start by setting the scene a little bit, looking at what it actually means to be reaching children and young people with additional needs and disabilities and their families. And in order to understand that, it really helps us to appreciate the scale of the need that's there, and approximately 2.5 million children and young people across the UK have an additional need of some kind. And that's a big number. There's a lot of children and young people that includes, with a lot of different additional needs and disabilities. But as we think about that, what it helps us to understand is that this isn't just a niche area that we need to look at. It's actually something much broader, something that affects every church, every children's group, every youth group. And so maybe that is represented in your own work, in your own children's and youth work. Maybe 1 in 5 of the children you work with have an additional need or disability of some kind. And so holding those children and young people in your mind, let's continue on this journey together. About 90% of the families that connect to children and young people with additional needs are outside of the church. We don't see them. And so the children and young people that you're working with in your church setting, in your children's and youth groups, are the 10%. They're the minority. There are so many more there. And those children and young people are in your community. They're around you. They're in the streets and houses that are near to your church. And so we need to be looking beyond the 4 walls of our church, of our children's and youth group, and reaching out to those children and young people and their families too. So often those families feel excluded from a wide range of different kinds of social activity, including church. That's the whole family, including parents, but also really important to remember siblings in this as well. The brothers and sisters of the children and young people with additional needs and disabilities. So often they can be junior carers. So often they can find that the activities they're able to engage with can be limited as a result of being the brother or sister of a child or a young person with additional needs. And so reaching those children as well and looking for ways in which to make provision for those brothers and sisters to support them and encourage them, a really important part of what we're considering as well. And looking at how that whole family can be supported. This isn't about providing for children and young people for an hour on a Sunday morning or for an hour and a half or a couple of hours on a club night evening. It's looking at how the whole church can stand with that family, can support that family throughout the week and look to ways to actively engage with that family in really helpful and supportive ways. There was a great story last summer of a family that was looking at the 6-week summer holiday. A family that had 2 children with additional needs and wasn't getting any respite care throughout that 6-week period. And they were desperate for some help, and they approached their local church and said, is there anything you could do to help us, to support us? And the church stepped up in wonderful ways. They took the children out for days, they cooked meals for the family, they took mum out for a pampering session, they took dad out for a bit of lad time. They did all sorts of things that helped that family to get through that 6-week period, and it really made a difference to them. It really helped them to be able to cope with what would have been a really tough time for them, because being a parent of a child with additional needs or disability is hard. I'm the parent of a 14-year-old lad with autism. His name's James, and I love him to bits. He's an absolute inspiration for me. But 24/7, 365 days a year, it can be hard parenting a child with additional needs and disability. And so finding ways for the church to get alongside those families and support them throughout the week, as well as just on Sunday mornings, is really important too. Over half of families that have a disabled child or a child with additional needs report that it creates at some point serious, significant relationship difficulties or even breakups. It grieves me as the dad of a child with additional needs to say that often it's dad who checks out, dad who can't cope, and that leaves mum with the additional challenge of being a single parent and raising a child with additional needs. Now, it's not always mum that's left with that responsibility, although often that's the case. So look out for those single parents in your church community and look at how to help them too. Poor communities in more deprived areas are twice as likely to include children and young people with additional needs than those in more affluent parts of the country. All kinds of reasons for that. That could be as a result of perhaps better access to health support and advice for more affluent families. Diet can play a significant factor in some cases too. For all kinds of reasons, poorer communities are more likely to see children and young people with additional needs than more affluent communities. And so if that is you, if you're working in poorer communities, then you're going to see more children and young people with a range of additional needs coming into your work. And finally, the statistic that breaks my heart the most, and I hope touches you too, is that 60% of all children and young people with additional needs are bullied. And bullying happens in all the places that we would expect to see it: in school, on the street, and of course increasingly online. But we also see bullying in our schools, in our churches. Bullying can be the tuts that people make, the harsh looks, the hurtful comments that are made by other members of the congregation. And so we need to call people up on that too, and make sure that our churches are places of belonging, safe places, places where children and young people and their families can be and be themselves and be accepted for who they are. So that's set the scene a little bit for us. That's given us some thoughts to kick off this evening session. I want to share a story with you now that helps to land a few of these things before we move on to some of the things that we can do that would make a real difference to those children and young people that we're journeying with. I want to tell you about Martin. I'm involved in 10s to 13s work at my home church in Bournemouth, and a few summers ago now we had a midweek club night for our 10s to 13-year-olds, and it was a beautiful, lovely midsummer's evening. I don't know if you remember those. It seems a long time ago now, doesn't it? But they're coming back. It's getting better. And I was on the door greeting the children, saying hi to some of the parents as they dropped their children off. And I saw a car draw up, and a mum and her son got out that I didn't recognise. I hadn't seen them before. But as they headed up the pathway towards me, I knew there was a powerful story coming with them. And when they reached me, Mum looked at me and she said, "This kids club that you run, is it just for church children, or is it available and open to anybody from the community to attend?" I said, "No, it's open to anybody, age 10 to 13. We're a little bit flexible around the edges of that. And Tuesday evenings, 7 till 8:30, we're usually a little bit flexible around the edges of that too." And I could see she was building herself up to something else. And out it came, and she said, only Martin has ADHD. And sometimes that displays itself in his behaviour. And we've tried to get him into other groups, into other clubs, but they've always said no. They've always said they haven't got enough volunteers, or the volunteers haven't had the right training, or they don't have experience of special or additional needs. Would he be able to come to your club? So no pressure then. And I have to tell you that 90% of my attention was absolutely wrapped up in what this mum was sharing with me. And my heart was breaking as she was telling me the story. And you might be wondering what the other 10% of my attention was doing. Well, it was distracted by the chaos that was going on in the room behind me. There was screaming, there were kids climbing the walls. I was wondering where the rest of the team were. But as I occasionally got distracted and looked around to see what was happening, I saw 2 or 3 other young people that we were journeying with at that time, all of whom had ADHD or were on the autism spectrum or had other additional needs. And I just heard a little voice whispering in my ear saying, "There's room for one more, you know, there's room for one more." And so I turned to Martin and his mum and I said, "We would love for Martin to be a part of our group, and as you'll see, he'll fit right in." And she laughed as she looked over my shoulder at the chaos going on behind me, and as she laughed, a light came into her eyes and a weight lifted from her shoulders. And it was great to see, because somebody had finally said yes to her son. So what do we do when we've said yes? What do we do when we've accepted a child or young person into our group? And we said, of course, we would love that child or young person to come. Well, we're going to look at a few tips now, a few helpful hints that will give us some pointers that would just make it easier for those children and young people to feel included, to belong, and to be a part of what we do. If anybody's joined us since we started this Facebook Live broadcast, you're welcome. We've just been setting the scene a little bit. We're going to be moving on now to looking at some helpful tips that can help us to know how to include those children and young people. Do please keep liking and commenting the broadcast. That helps it to be shared with others and also helps us to hear from you as well. If you do one thing, if from this broadcast you do one thing in your church, in your children's and youth work, to make a difference to the way in which you engage with children and young people and their families where there are additional needs, then do this. Appoint an inclusion leader or champion, or a SENCO to use the education term. Somebody who can look at the things that you're doing in your group through the eyes of the children and young people with additional needs that you're journeying with. So what does it look like for a 9-year-old lad with autism to come into a busy room full of people, full of noise, where his senses are overloaded, where he finds it hard to cope, and where he's just really struggling to be able to manage the build-up of emotion and feeling that's going on inside him? Or what does it mean for a girl with dyslexia when we've got some words on a screen which have as their background some fabulous photos or moving images, but those photos and moving images make all the words in front of them just swim before her eyes? Or what does it mean for a young person who has mobility disability when our worship leader says, "Let's all stand and worship," and they can't stand? Does that mean they can't worship? So looking at the world that we create within our children's and youth work or within our church setting through the eyes of those children and young people we're working with, and figuring out what those things are that are hard for them, so that we can then try and change what we do to help those children and young people to feel they belong. We shouldn't expect them to do the changing. We should be the ones that are prepared to change in order to make what we do more accessible, more inclusive, and to create that place of belonging for all the children and young people that we work with. And we start to understand what changes we need to make by understanding more about those children and young people themselves. And we do that through the people that know them best, through their parents or carers. We understand how that young person communicates and engages with the world. What strategies might be in place in other settings that that child or young person is in. And all that we can glean and gather from those responsible adults that will help us to be able to engage more effectively with that child or young person. A lot of it is down to the language that we use when engaging with parents and carers. Let me share with you another little story that illustrates that from an experience I had at a place I was visiting once. And in that setting, in the children's setting, there had been a young lad aged about 8 or 9 that particular Sunday morning. And although the parents hadn't identified to the team any particular additional needs that young lad had, it looked likely that he was on the autism spectrum somewhere. And he had a great time in the session. And at the end of it, as the parents arrived to collect him, the children's worker sort of hurriedly grabbed him up off the floor and marched him across towards the parents and greeted them with this comment. So, Timmy's obviously got special needs. What are they? I can promise you, this was a little while ago, these parents were much better at building a wall than even Donald Trump may prove to be. You could see the wall visibly building as they grabbed their child and were visibly protecting him from these comments that were being made. A better way for that children's worker to have engaged with them might have been for them to have carefully guided Timmy across and said, "It's been great having Timmy with us here this morning. We've loved having him as part of our group. And we'd love to see him again if you would like to come again next week and bring him with you. And if you do, are there some things that Timmy likes to do? What does he enjoy? What does he do best? Because it would be great to include some of that in the things that we do. Are there any things that he finds a bit harder, and maybe we can support him better in those things, or try to make sure we don't do them within the group?" And that kind of language would be much, much more likely to get a positive response from parents or carers and give us access to a wealth of information that would help us to help their child in a much more intentional way. Another way of getting hold of that kind of information is to use something like a one-page profile. You can see one on the screen next to me. There are many versions of this available. Here's a version of it that's been partially completed. And so it shares, in this case, Rebecca's story, what people like and admire about her. She's easygoing. She gives everything a try. She's got a great smile. She's friendly. She knows her own mind. She sits back and lets life pass by a little bit. She likes watching telly, going to the pictures, ordering food and going to Pizza Hut and a whole range of things that make her happy. But she needs a little bit of help to understand things. They sometimes need to be repeated. She needs us to be patient and to give her a bit more thinking time. She always needs people to walk on her left so that she knows where they are. And if she has a bit of a seizure, which in Rebecca's case can happen, she may just be demonstrating as part of that something is something that she doesn't like. All kinds of things that Rebecca is able to demonstrate ways that she wants to be supported. And a one-page profile like this can be really effective in helping to help us understand more about the children and young people that we're working with. And actually, they work really well across all children and young people too. Now, if you go to www.chefkids.co.uk, you can download lots of these one-page profiles. There's a wealth of information available on that particular website, all freely available for us to use, and amongst it you'll find one-page profiles of a variety of different designs and styles and kinds that you could use. Have strategies known by the whole team for each child. So having understood a bit more about how what we do affects a child or young person, having understood from parents and carers the way in which we can support them best, the things that they like the most, build a strategy that the whole team knows so that that child or young person can be supported by the whole team each time they're in the group. Now, there might be strategies that work across an individual child or young person in that group, or that are effective for the whole group. One thing that can work well with a lot of children and young people is to have a fiddles box. You've got a picture of the fiddles box on the screen next to me, and here's my fiddles box that I use a variety of things that you can allow children and young people to choose that they can toy with in their hand, that they can fiddle with, to help them to focus and to concentrate. Sometimes you might think, well, giving them something to fiddle with, isn't that going to be a distraction for them? Well, in the same way as many of us focus better and concentrate better if the radio's on in the background or there's some music playing, so children and young people can often focus and concentrate better if they've got something in their hand that they can toy with and fiddle with to help them to focus. And a variety of different things that are in the fiddles box. This is a new addition, a little fiddle cube. These are readily available on Amazon, eBay and so on. A great little device that just fits in the hand and is really great to play around with. And experience shows that if we don't give children and young people, particularly those with additional needs that need something to fiddle with to help them to focus and to help them to concentrate, they'll find something to fiddle with, or maybe somebody to fiddle with instead. And so giving them something that is appropriate and safe is a great strategy to use. Consider one-to-one or buddy support. Now, if I could see you all that are watching this on Facebook, and welcome to anybody that's joined us since we started this evening's broadcast. Do continue to send in your comments and likes. That helps us to connect with you. If I could see you, I would ask how many of you come from groups that have more helpers and volunteers than you need, and I wouldn't expect to see many hands in the air. I know it's hard to get children's and youth workers to help out in the work that you're doing, but we sometimes need to fish in a different pond for children's and youth workers to be one-to-one helpers. Often it's people that don't see themselves as a children's or youth worker, but could see themselves as somebody that would sit with a child or a young person to help them to engage with the programme, to understand what's coming next, to be able to keep focused and to understand the context of what's being talked about. Often the grandparent generation can be really good at this. My lad James has got 3 one-to-one helpers who rotate around and support him wonderfully. They don't all see themselves as children's workers, but they do see themselves as people that just love this lad, want to spend time with him, and want to help him to be able to get the most out of his time at church. Another great source of help is other young people. The kind of young people that are always the ones when somebody's hurt or upset. Is always the first one to go and put an arm around them and console them and ask them if they're okay. They make great buddies, and with appropriate supervision, really good to give them that experience of supporting other children and young people. So consider having one-to-one support or buddies where possible. Use what they enjoy doing to help them to learn. If we expect a child or young person with a variety of different additional needs to stay focused and stay engaged for maybe 10 or 15 minutes during a talk, then that's going to be really hard for them. But to help them stay engaged by connecting something that they really enjoy and are really good at is a really successful strategy to try. Some examples on the screen here include perhaps a jigsaw puzzle. Now in the picture you can see there of James. Here's James making a jigsaw puzzle of Mickey Mouse and friends, and we were talking about friendship that particular day. We were talking about the importance of friendship, and James loves doing jigsaw puzzles. He sometimes shows off by doing them upside down, and can do 250, 300 piece jigsaw puzzles upside down if he has a mind to. But in this case, he was doing a jigsaw puzzle of Mickey Mouse and friends. It was about friends. It was doing something that he really enjoyed doing, There were other visual prompts for him. Somebody was talking about friendship, and you can't see on this picture, but just to his left-hand side is a one-to-one helper who's helping him to engage with the topic as well. And all of that in combination, giving him things to do with his hands, giving him something that he enjoys, giving him input verbally and visually around that topic of friendship, helped him to be able to get the most from that particular session. Now, jigsaws may not be the thing that your children and young people enjoy and engage with, but we've got some other examples on the screen here of things that they might like instead. For example, Lego. We've got the Temple of Jerusalem built in Lego on the screen there. And there's the Lego Bible, the Brick Bible, that can be used to allow children and young people to access God's Word in a medium that they will benefit from, that they will enjoy, that they will be able to connect with. We can also see on the screen Minecraft and stories being told through the medium of Minecraft. And there's the Minecraft Bible, again, ways in which we can connect with young people and children using a medium that they really enjoy and can connect with and are good at doing and are likely to really stick with throughout that story that we're sharing with them. So use the things that they really enjoy to help them to connect and engage with the story or topic that you're trying to get across to them. Use different kinds of communication. It's really important that we use more methods of communication than just verbal communication to help that child or young person to engage with what we're doing and to understand where they are in the programme, to understand what's coming next and where their favourite part of the programme might be. On screen you'll see James's visual timetable. James's visual timetable is something we use on a regular basis to help James to understand what's going on, where he is in the programme, and how to connect to what we're doing. Got a version of it here, and what you can see is that it starts with us going to church. Now, James loves going to church. He's been going to church since he was a young lad, and so he knows that when we show him his picture next to church, that's where he's going. When we get to church, James has control of the visual timetable. It's important that he understands what's happening next himself. He'll sometimes move it down to perhaps snack time. And we have to explain to him that actually no, it's not snack time yet. We've got circle time first and then some other activities and then we get to snack time. But he moves his picture down as we go through the various parts until we get to time to go home. Home time at the bottom of the sheet. And having a visual timetable like that is something that can really help him to know where he is, know what's happening next, know when it's time to go home. You can have an individual timetable like that, or you could have a great big one for the whole group to use, and use a big picture to move through each stage of your programme so that all the children and young people know what's coming next. And that really helps them to avoid some of the build-up of stress and anxiety that uncertainty would otherwise create in them. Be creative, learn from others, understand that you're not in this journey on your own. There will be others in your local area that are on a similar journey. Connect with other churches and understand what they're doing to support the children and young people with additional needs that they're working with. And learn from each other. Share experience, share ideas, share resources. There may be things that they're doing that you could try and vice versa. But also connect across the country with other people that are on this journey too. Those of you that are connecting on Facebook might like to join the Additional Needs Alliance group. Do join us there. There are nearly 1,000 people who have been through the fuller version of this training program. We run a version of this program that's a couple of hours that includes a lot more information than what we've been able to share in this shorter version this evening. But people then connect to the Additional Needs Alliance group to continue that journey, continue that conversation, to access resources and support and more help to get answers to questions. And so don't journey alone, link locally, link across the country through groups like the Additional Needs Alliance. And finally, remember to pray. Really important that at the beginning of each of our sessions with children and young people with additional needs, we lift them up before God in prayer and lift ourselves up before God in prayer too. It's so important that we do that, and to know that God is with us, that God will bless our work, that God will give us the right things to say to the children that we're working with, and that through that work we will be transforming the lives of those children and young people and their families. Families that, as we saw at the beginning, often feel so isolated, so alone, so marginalised, so used to hearing no, and just long for us to get alongside them, help them, support them, and reach their children and young people in Jesus' name. Really hope that you found this evening helpful. As I said, there's a fuller version of this available too, so do seek us out. There'll be some links for that in just a moment. But there is an opportunity. I don't know if any questions have come through to the team. If anybody's been asking anything, that it would be great just to answer as we go along right now.
We've added some links into the comments where questions have come in. But
Fantastic.
any more, do send them in.
Do keep asking questions, and we'll feed back some answers to help respond to those questions and to give you the support and information that you're looking for there. So do keep those questions coming in.
There was one question, Mark.
We've got a question?
What would you think would go in a typical fiddles box? What sorts of things might go in there?
Okay, so the question is, what would go in a typical fiddles box? Well, here's a typical fiddles box, and in my typical fiddles box I've got some Play-Doh. James in particular likes the squidgy feel of Play-Doh. It's great to go for a selection of different things that provide different sensory inputs, and so things that you can twiddle and fiddle with like this are pretty good. Things that you can stretch and pull work well. Things that you can bend and twist, they're good too. Things that may have a sort of a light inside them, that's great. Things like little bean bags, those can work well as well, and you know, if they're quite sort of heavy ones, that gives another different sensory input. But you can get all sorts of things from the 99p store or pound store, bits and pieces that you can pick up cheaply on eBay and Amazon too. Little things that every now and then you'll find that you think, yeah, that would be great, I'll just add that in. And if you end up with a couple of things or something that a couple of children both want, well, just pop back to the 99p store next time and get another one. And just build up a little collection of things that will help. Any other questions, guys? No, I think we're doing okay there. Yep, let's crack on then to our final sort of slide, which is to give you more information. If you want to follow up this evening, then there are a bunch of links on the website, on the screen here, which the team are also sending out on the Facebook feed. So if you want to know more about the full length all-inclusive training event, then do go to urbansaints.org/all-inclusive. There are a number of these already happening across parts of the country over the next few months. We're taking more and more bookings all the time, so do connect in with one of those, or if you'd like to host one, then do get in touch and we'll explore making that happen too. That would be great. If you want to know more about our wider additional needs ministry, of which All Inclusive is a part, urbansaints.org/additional needs will give you that broader view of all the other areas of inclusion work that we're involved in. Again, remember to join the Additional Needs Alliance Facebook group. Just search in Facebook for Additional Needs Alliance and one of our admins will add you in pretty quickly. And if you want to follow my Additional Needs blog, then do join that at additionalneedsblogfather.wordpress.com. So that's the additionalneedsblogfather.wordpress.com. It'd be great to journey with you there. It's been great to spend this time this evening. I hope that you found this evening valuable and helpful. Do keep your comments and questions coming after we finish this broadcast this evening. We'll also look to make this video available to access again, so if there are others that you think would benefit from seeing it, then look out for that. Let us know if you would like us to share that with you, and we'll make sure that you can access that as soon as possible. Great to spend this evening with you. Thank you so much for joining and being a part of our all-inclusive Facebook Live event this evening. Good night.